to Mansell's right rear, causing this situation for Mansell. But at least it comes at a time in which there is a full course yellow. But again, the guy that it pays off for is Bobby Rahal, who is still the leader of the race, has gone 24 laps since his last stop and will have an advantage. Now, let's take a look at Mansell's car. And he did touch him.
Contact.
Indeed, absolutely.
You can see the left front wing of Johansson. Look at there. There he hit with it, so it's all destroyed now. But you can see where he got into Mansell's right rear tire, Paul, and it blew it out or cut it. And then his wing, you can see the side plate flapping just before he hit the yellow car of Cale Fabbie there.
Indications are that Bobby Rahal should make a stop shortly and take advantage of this yellow. That will give Paul Tracy the lead of the race. This is Eddie Cheever's situation again. A slick track, the back end comes loose, and Cheever's into the wall.
Now, did you see all the trash that came back on the racetrack? Eddie hit the wall, then came back on the track. So all that gray stuff underneath come out. That's what's making it slippery. Plus, not particularly this tire that's blown on the thing, but all the little tire balls are laying out there.
And now Bobby Rahal comes in. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, they gambled. They got the yellow that they want. Bobby hits the brakes once, a second time, and it's a smooth stop as they go to work on the car. Rahal, who won this race last year, only his second event in this new Lola chassis. This crew has done a terrific job in less than 2 weeks' time. They'll get him back on the circuit right now in under 13 seconds.
And as you plan the strategy of the race, it looks like Rahal got real close to one of the pylon markers there. He stops on lap 46. 77 laps is the scheduled distance. We are still under yellow. So we're waiting for the green now. And we'll be waiting, too, for a stop-and-go penalty for Paul Tracy as the speed begins to pick up, and Danny Sullivan will be bringing them back to green. And we're racing once again. Robbie Gordon closing in on Little Al, then stretches back. Boisel sits in fourth place. Mario Andretti is fifth. And there's Paul Tracy in and out for his stop-and-go penalty. And he roars back into the fight. He came into the pits in 11th place. He'll fall much further behind now.
But keep one thing in mind. It's not quite as bad as it looks because he's got the fuel to go to the end and supposedly the tires. Most of the other guys, with the exception of Rahal, still should have to stop again, Paul.
Update on Little Al. Here's Gary Gerould.
Well, we checked in with Rick Gallus, getting word on both Sullivan and Little Al. Can you make it without a splash and go for fuel at the end? He says we need 1.83 miles per gallon. That's very close. He admits it, but he says we're out here to win. It's been a long time. They're hungry. They're going to gamble and go for it, Paul.
Rick Gallus, you saw him there. He's always a gambler.
Yes, and you know, right, that's a good gamble to make, I think, because he can tell his drivers short shift. That'll save a lot of fuel. They won't even have to cut the boost back. The main thing is they could really make it.
We've got the onboard telemetry from Chevrolet's engine here on Little Al's car. Let's see. In fact, he is short shifting. Bobby, you watch him. Let's just listen to it and watch for a second.
Short shifting right now, although you only know that if you're the driver.
So back to the green flag. Danny Sullivan is in front of Al Unser Jr. We'll be back with more from Belle Isle after this message and a word from our ABC stations. And Scott Brayton in trouble. He came with a quick spin off the course and he wants to get going again.
Well, we can't see what happened to him right now, but he's sure upset about something, Paul. The main thing is, if they're pushing him so he lost it, you got to restart it.
Boy, was that lucky.
That's really lucky. These things don't always start with just a push like that.
That's not the car we're more accustomed to seeing Scott in. He brushed his primary car against the wall in practice. There you see he got together with Groff. It just took him around. He wisely let it roll all the way off the course. Got a little push from the course marshal.
You can just see, it didn't really hurt the car, but you can just see how slippery the racetrack is, not from oil and water, but mainly from rubber, Paul, and probably the tires just being worked too hard today.
Once again, take a look. Brayton trying to dart inside of Groff. Groff kind of turned to the inside. The two of them bounced together.
That's what you call
no contact.
That's what you call getting the door shut on you, but it really wasn't anybody's fault. That's a real racing accident that couldn't be avoided.
And it did get Scott Brayton back into the fight on board second place. Al Unser Jr., his teammate Danny Sullivan, is ahead, just having completed 52 laps, but Danny is now pulling out 1.5 seconds ahead of Al Unser Jr. Is it possible the team is working here together, where one of them is going to be the rabbit and the other is going to try and conserve?
Well, as we studied those revs on the onboard telemetry, the highest that Al Unser Jr. took his engine was 12.6. That's an engine that can rev easily into the 13,000s. It's not impossible that he's gambling on fuel consumption, and Sullivan is not, because there's a big spread in the way they're running right now, and I don't think there's that big a spread in the way they actually drive if they're using the car the same way. Now let's look at Sullivan's throttle and see how much he uses. He's in a tight part of the track now. We saw 12.7 there briefly.
And they really won't have a deal going between them. They just look at that that's another car as far as they're concerned.
Oh yeah, there'll be no teamwork there. They race each other, as we well know from Long Beach last year when Sullivan tapped Little Al, who was leading the race with just a lap to go. Sullivan went on to win that one.
Mario Andretti tries to hold off Ari Lyondike. This is a battle for 5th place. Ari closing.
Except for Ari's brilliant month of May, where he had the pole position and wound up finishing second. He's had a miserable year so far with this car, which appears to have everything that it would need to have. Of course, a former Indy winner and winner of other IndyCar races, but he just hasn't had it together.
Sometimes teams just don't click for whatever reason. Maybe the guy doesn't get along with the mechanics or the team owner, or who knows. They just
Scott
don't
Brayton
click.
back in after his quick little spin. He apparently wanted to make sure he had good tires all the way around. Didn't want to go through that experience again.
He's been in so many times, another stop would probably be good. He's already been one car. He's better off trying to keep this in pretty good shape, Paul.
Scott Brayton continues on after completing his 4th stop of the day, and we watch Robbie Gordon carrying A.J. Foyt's number 14. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Paul, Robbie Gordon is one of those drivers that may have to come in for a splash and go. They had 29 gallons on board. They say they're going to have to average 2 miles a gallon to make it to the end. They're just shrugging their shoulders. They may be one of the teams to stop.
You know, A.J. Foyt really likes this young man. As a matter of fact, he came up to me in the pits and said, hey, you got to mention my guy more. So, A.J., I mentioned him, Gordon, and Gordon again. Bob.
Running 3rd place, but watch it when he comes off some of those turns. The rear end jumps right out. Now, this boy's been coming up through off-road racing, running on the dirt, so he knows.
At the
what
front
it's
of
like
the field,
to
Al Unser Jr. now trying to close on his teammate, Danny Sullivan. Danny was a 1.5 seconds ahead a couple of laps ago, but now Little Al is right there and trying on his own teammate.
Sullivan drove a defensive line into that next to last turn. He certainly knows what's going on here.
54 laps are complete, scheduled distance 77 laps.
The cars are all running loose here. You watch Little Al rear end pop out occasionally.
Little Al gets onto the inside, tries to get past Danny Sullivan.
Over and over this season, the pattern for Little Al has been starting deep in the field and coming on. He's come up as high as 3rd or 4th. He's never had a shot at the lead before.
Remember that it is terribly slick just offline on several of these corners. We have seen evidence of that, so it's a precarious run for Little Al.
Let's also keep in mind both of them have a fuel problem if they're trying to make it to the end. Like Rick Gallis said, it's a gamble, so they can't race each other too hard.
So these two cars battle at the front of the field. They are teammates.
Every single race this year, as I said earlier, you see him there, shortcutting that turn, has been won either by the Penske team or the Newman-Haas team. This is the first time a real threat to that dominance has been mounted.
Neither driver has won since last year. They both look for a victory here today. As we take a look at the full field running order at the conclusion of 55 laps and continue to watch the battle for the lead. And from time to time, too, you get a glimpse of Robbie Gordon as he begins to close in from 3rd place.
The interesting thing as we watch the two of them there, the three of them, is how's he going to pass? They would all like to get offline and do a turn, pass in a turn, Paul. The problem is there's too many marbles out there, too much slipperiness out there.
Second time as they've crossed over the line that Al Unser Jr. has come to Danny's right, let him know that he's there, and let him know that he's thinking about it.
As we see that rundown, were the championship, were the race to end right now, the championship would actually be closer. Bosell with 64 points, Mansell with 74, just 12 ahead of Bosell. So right now, with this current situation, Bosell is closing up in the championship on Mansell.
Mansell currently runs in 8th place. The fight is at the front of the field. Al Unser Jr. trying to reel in Danny Sullivan. Update on Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerould.
All the speculation about the fuel. He had a fuel pickup problem yesterday in qualifying when they were below 5 gallons. They redid the cell. They hope they cured the problem. They won't know until the final laps of this race. So the leader has another concern, Paul.
So Sullivan trying to hold off a charging teammate Al Unser Jr. Bosell now closing on Gordon, and Gordon closing on the battle for the lead. There are 56 laps now complete at the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. There's golf this afternoon here on ABC Sports. Right after the racing, coming up next, Jack Nicklaus previews golf's national championship, the U.S. Open. And then next Saturday, it's 18-hole coverage of the 93rd U.S. Open Championship right here on ABC Sports. But for the time being, it's the Indy cars. One car off the edge of the course, a waving yellow in that area. The battle continues for the lead.
I think Sullivan has had the feeling in the last few months that this team, the Gallus team, really belongs emotionally to Little Al and not to him. After all, it is a New Mexico-based team, and Little Al lives in Albuquerque. So this is a kind of, there's an edge to this rivalry, as you see Shelley Unser there, looking on as her man battles with Danny Sullivan, who we ride with there.
You know, we haven't seen Danny Sullivan drive this hard all year. The guy is really being gutsy right now and determined. That's something we haven't seen for a long time with him.
Both cars very well matched, both out of the same stable. Those different crews handle these cars, but now slower traffic becomes a factor just ahead.
Oh, going by Brayton there. And of course, as we talked at the beginning of the show, you see Ari Luyendyk has
stopped in the course. He was that car that we saw a moment ago on that aerial view.
As you talk about the foreign-born drivers who are in this race, and 15 of the 28 starters were foreign-born, suddenly we're looking at 3 Americans on the top of the list.
You see Luyendyk right there. Now, he wants to get a pull in. The idea is he's sitting there trying to force the truck to come around and get him, which my guess is they will. We'll have to do it to get him out of the way.
The question, of course, is whether or not they'll go to another full course yellow just to get that vehicle off of the course. They don't have to. Look in Danny Sullivan's pit. A lot of higher mathematics going down there as they try to figure out if they have sufficient fuel to make it to the end of this run.
They're praying for a yellow right now. That would put both of them pretty good chance, and a real good chance of winning, or a pretty good chance of winning the race.
Both Sullivan and Al Unser Jr., very highly paid drivers who've really not been producing, and now they are very much as this race winds to a conclusion.
You can see little Al working really hard on Sullivan now, because when they're catching somebody to lap, that's when Sullivan might become vulnerable to a pass. So little Al works really hard when that happens.
Exactly. Sullivan having to go offline to get by. That's Willie T. Ribbs that he went by along with